Welcome back to Tracing the Sky. So far in this journey, we've really been focused on the daily motion of the sun and the nightly motion of the stars. And we spent a lot of time really diving into the stars and how they move. And I promise that as we start to get into visualizing the solar system, having this really grounded foundation and observation is going to be super helpful. We spent a lot of time really looking at how things are moving and taking our time to understand that motion. And so when we get more abstract, this will be invaluable to us. Now, so far we've looked at how things move over the course of a single day, for the most part. We've seen that everything moves from east to west. The stars move from east to west, the sun moves from east to west. And it appears as if they're all going around the Earth in circles. With the stars, we saw that they all appear to be moving together, that all the stars are moving as one, that they all seem to be circling around Polaris, that the stars closer to Polaris are always visible to us, but as the stars get further away from Polaris, we're going to see them rise in the east and then set in the west. And so the next big question we started to look at was, how are things moving over longer periods of time? If we start to look at the stars over multiple days, what do we notice? And when we looked at the Big Dipper, we saw that over the course of many weeks and months, the Big Dipper wasn't in the same spot. And so today we're going to expand on that and dive a little deeper. So the main way we were able to tell where the Big Dipper was is by looking at where it was right after sunset. Right after the sun went down and the stars became visible, we made a note of where the Big Dipper was in August and later on in November, and we saw that it was in a drastically different place. Now, so far, when we've been looking at the stars, one thing we've noticed about them is that they move as a single unit. It's as if there's this giant black sphere that's studded with the stars, and the entire sphere is moving as one. And now the really interesting question is whether the sun is part of that sphere. Is the sun moving with the stars, or is it moving differently? And our experiment with the Big Dipper gave us a hint, but today we're going to dive into that a lot deeper. So let's hop over to my screen and take a look. Okay, so here we are facing south, and you can see that the sun is about to set. And here's what I want to do. I want to look at which stars are rising in the east right as the sun is setting. Right, so we'll do something similar with the Big Dipper where we tried to find where the Big Dipper was right after sunset. But now what we're going to do is look at stars that are rising in the east and see if those are the same over the course of many nights. Because if the sun was part of our big sphere that's turning all the stars, then we would expect to see the same stars, right? As the sun sets, the same stars that are opposite it are rising in the sky. So let's turn our attention to face east, and what we'll do is we'll let the sun kind of set in the sky. So we'll jump forward a little bit in time, and we'll start to go forward a little bit faster. And so what I've done here is I'm going to turn on a constellation, and we can turn on Aries. So you can see that right after the sun sets, Aries is rising in the east at this time of year, right? So it's, September 18th on our modern calendar, and we can see that Aries is rising in the east right after the sun sets. Okay, so before we jump too many days into the future, I want to just really reaffirm that Aries, just like the other stars, is moving from east to west in this arc. So let's drop a marker here, and let's jump forward an hour, and then let's drop another marker, and we'll just keep doing this a little bit until we really establish that it's doing the same kind of motion. And you can see that, it's rising, it's going from east to west. So it's doing that standard kind of motion that we've come to expect from the stars. And so if we kept going over the course of the rest of the night, you would see Aries kind of continue along that path. And you're welcome to click the link in the description and do this for yourself, drop those markers, and trace Aries' path through the night sky. Now, what I want to do is something similar to the Big Dipper. Before we look at how Aries is moving over the course of multiple nights in a row, let's just jump forward a few weeks and see where Aries is a little bit further into the future. If it's on the same sphere as the sun, or if the sun's on the same sphere as all the stars, we would expect Aries to be roughly in the same place. Every time the sun sets, we would expect to see Aries to be roughly in the same place. So, that means it would be roughly over here, right? Notice these landmarks, these trees, and where Aries originally was for us. So feel free to pause the video here, click the link and do this yourself, play around with it, see what you can notice, and then rejoin once you're ready. Okay, so I've jumped this forward in time by 1 month, and we're just at sunset, and we're going to wait until the stars are visible. And what we want to see is, where is Aries right after the sun sets? Is it in the same place as a month ago? Is it in a different position? And one thing that would be great for you to try on your own is pause and think about the experiment we did with the Big Dipper. How did the Big Dipper move? And if Aries moves in a similar way, what would you expect to happen? So let's jump forward in time when you're ready and see where Aries is right after sunset. So went forward an hour, let's turn on and see where Aries is. And you can see that it's further west than it was the previous month. So if we look at where Aries is at right after sunset, it's further west in the sky than it was the previous month. So it's doing something very similar to the Big Dipper. If you remember, the Big Dipper wasn't in the same position. It had moved further west along its arc. And what's also really interesting is, if we jump forward another hour, Aries appears to be on the same path. It's a little bit further ahead, but if we keep going an hour, it's still following that same arc that we saw a previous month. So Aries is traveling all around the Earth in the same path as it was the previous month, but it's further ahead. Well, let's think about our experiment and how we've been conducting it. We've said that we're going to go outside right after the sun sets and look at where the stars are. Well, why and what does that really mean? What's happening? Well, we said so far that it looks as if the sun is rising in the east, setting in the west, and circling the Earth. So we can take the sun's position at sunset as it having gone once around the Earth. And if we look at the next day, the sun has done that once more. So every time we see the sun setting, it's gone around the Earth one full time. And so what we're doing is we're looking at how far the stars have moved in the time that it takes the sun to go once around the Earth. Okay, so we're arriving at one of our first major discoveries. Remember, we started by asking whether the sun was part of the same sphere that was moving the stars. It appears as if all the stars are moving together, and we wanted to know whether the sun was moving with them. And so if in the time it takes the sun to go once around the Earth, it was part of the same sphere, we would expect the stars to have gone once around the Earth and be in the same place. But that's not what we see. When we look at Aries, or we looked at the Big Dipper, we're seeing something different. Aries is going once around the Earth and a little bit more in the same time it takes the sun to go once around the Earth. So let me just be clear. In the time it takes the sun to go around the Earth once, Aries is going once plus a little bit. So what does that mean? Well, if Aries is moving further along the circle in the same amount of time, it means that Aries is moving faster. And if all the stars are moving together, it means all of the stars are moving faster than the sun. In the time it takes the sun to go once around the Earth, the stars are going around once and a little bit more. Okay, so this is a really major thing for us to have observed, and a really important discovery. And there are a bunch of important implications I want to take you through. If the stars are moving faster, it means that each night they're going around the Earth and a little bit further ahead. So if we think about Aries, over the course of many days, Aries is going to be further and further west in the sky. And so what would happen if we came back a few months later? Well, if you use that original demo link, go try it out for yourself. See where Aries is at the beginning of each night, right after the sun sets, and see what happens over the course of many months. And then come back and we'll have a look together. Okay, so I've jumped this forward in time a few months, and I want to know where Aries is now. So it's now March of the following year. So we've gone quite a bit since September of the previous year. And so let's check out where Aries is right after the sun sets. And so I don't see Aries anywhere in the sky, so it must have moved quite a bit further west. So let's have a look. And wow, there it is. So Aries, which was rising in the east when we first started looking at it in September, is now about to set in the west. That's really, really incredible. It has moved a little bit further west each night. So much so that now, a few months later, when the sun's setting, Aries has almost caught up to it. It's like Aries is chasing the sun and it's catching it. Okay, well, this raises one really interesting question. When we first started looking in September, Aries was rising in the east. But now when we look, Aries is setting. So what's rising in the east now? And what happens over time? Well, let's have a look. Okay, here we are facing east, and you can see that there's a new constellation rising. Remember, back in September, Aries was rising right after sunset. But here we have Virgo rising in the east, and Aries has drifted so far west that it's about to set. And you can imagine that if enough time passed, Aries would continue its westward drift until it started rising in the east again. I've added a few other constellations that are part of the band that we call the Zodiac. We've got Leo and Cancer and Gemini and Taurus. And over time, each of these will have its turn to rise in the east after sunset. Okay, well, we made some really important observations today. We saw that the stars are moving faster than the sun. In the same time it took the sun to go from sunset to sunset, we could see that the stars were going all the way around and drifting a little bit further west. And this westward drift meant that over time, we would eventually see a different constellation rising in the sky as the sun set. Now, this became really important for a lot of ancient civilizations. They noticed a relationship between which constellation they could see rising and things like the seasons or certain natural events. Take the Egyptians. They noticed that the Nile would flood just after Sirius was seen rising in the sky. So next time, we're going to turn our attention to the sun. Already we've seen that the sun is moving slower than the stars, but I want to show you what else is different. Now, if you're enjoying the series, it would mean so much if you would give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you next time.